This time I want to talk about subsidies. This is another thing for which a lot of people have a fundamental misunderstanding. People don't see subsidies for what they are. When an industry receives a subsidy, it is because they are not properly competing in the marketplace. And because of that, the business owner is receiving a taxpayer subsidy, which is really throwing money at an operation that is inefficient or operating in a sector for which there really is no demand. So throwing money at the problem makes it worse, and it allows people to be shielded from reality and responsibility. The subsidy money obviously is not free. It doesn't come out of nowhere. Every dollar that someone receives without working for means there's another person somewhere else that's working for that dollar without receiving it. And that is a fundamental reality underlying all this. So it and it's not just businesses, it's individuals that are, receiving aid, and that costs other people money too. And I see these ads all the time. Help with your phone bill, help with internet, help with home repairs for people that are under a certain income level, and car repairs for people whose cars don't pass the emissions testing. And that just is not sustainable. And these city governments that are offering these home repairs, for instance, say it's a way to maintain a healthy housing market in that city. And that's missing the point too. A healthy housing market in a city is not the result of a taxpayer funded program to help people fix up their houses. The city government says that increases the value of the house when it's has this repair done or that repair done, or a remodel in a room, what have you. And yes, it does increase the value of the home, but the taxpayer is funding that. And there's a net loss there. Someone that's working for that money is funding someone else's home repair. And then there's a bureaucracy that administers this program. And someone who isn't working to pay for that home repair is getting it at someone else's expense. That's not productive, and that's not right. It's not just. And so it's another ad, like I say for these home repairs, car repairs, phones, internet, free broadband. All of this has to be paid for by someone else. And that isn't fair to the people that have to pay for it. The thing about the home repairs, for instance, that they say that maintains a healthy housing market. That really is missing the point. What maintains a healthy housing market are jobs, healthy commerce, healthy business, healthy industry in a community is what maintains a healthy housing market. A government subsidy does not do that. And again, it's just like in my last video. People need to understand this, and we have to get away from this idea that government is the source of anything. It's a healthy private sector that is the source of anything stable and sustainable. And this free cell phone program is just more money out of people's pockets. And no one ever talks about cutting taxes on people so they can afford these things. They talk about raising taxes on other people so that people can receive a subsidy for these things. And because the news I saw was that there's a federal universal service charge on your bill every month. Look at that once and see how much of your money is going to provide other people with cell phones. Ask yourself if it's right that people receive money for cell phones that you're paying for. There was a Monique Crawford that was talking about how she had 6 cell phones in her purse and 24 more at home for a sum of 30. Apparently, there is not even oversight for the cell phone program when people receive multiple phones. And this Monique Crawford, I'll include a link, this Monique Crawford claims that she could go and get another one, like, even though she already had 30 of them. And it just seems incredible to me. It's one thing to provide someone with one cell phone, but when it's the bookkeeping is so sloppy that people can receive multiple ones on the taxpayer dime. These people selling the cell phones are making out like a bandit, but the taxpayers obviously are footing the bill for this. Then again, the broadband. It was an advertisement for broadband, and people were the justification for the broadband was that most Fortune 500 companies, 80% was the number given, only take job applications online. That is true that many companies only take job applications online, but it still does not mean that someone who receives a taxpayer funded broadband connection is going to use it to look for a job. Can they not go to a public library? I mean, look at it this way. The cell phones, obviously there's little oversight on that. Who's to say that there's going to be any more oversight over the broadband being provided by the taxpayer to actually ensure that people are using it to look for jobs? If they're receiving it on the taxpayer dime, there should be some oversight to ensure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to with that, rather than watching, I don't know, goofy cat videos on YouTube or something. Now, but I don't think that there's oversight to ensure that they're looking for jobs, and I'm not sure that the purpose is really for them to look for jobs. Because after I saw this ad for the free broadband, or after the segment in the news about this free broadband, there was a segment of the same newscast where Hillary Clinton was talking about how she planned to reach more voters through social media, through the internet, through YouTube. I think that is really the reason behind this taxpayer funded broadband for poor families. Is the reason I think that the Democrats aren't really interested in closing down the border, because they want to bring in more voters. I think that this subsidized broadband access for low income people is so that they can reach more voters. 60% of young people get their political information from the internet. And the left wants to reach more people, and they'll make us pay for it. They'll make the taxpayers pay for their desire to reach more leftist voters. It's tempting to think that the left has this next presidential election in the USA wrapped up, but you look at some of the stuff they're doing with their heavy-handed push for amnesty to the point of unilateral executive amnesty, and this push to provide broadband internet to as many as possible to reach as many people as possible, I think is at the root of this. When the push to provide low-income people with broadband internet is followed by a segment on Hillary talking about her desire to reach more voters through the internet, that is not a coincidence. Now, there is a Senator Brian Schatz from Hawaii. He says that people have been telling him that we need to fix this waste and this abuse in the cell phone program before providing broadband internet, so that there's not waste in that. Now, Senator Brian Schatz disagrees with that. And he says that we should have a bill that does both simultaneously. This too is not a coincidence. He's a Democrat himself. He wants to reach these other voters with this subsidized broadband internet. Again, so many voters get their information from that, and they're trying to reach out to these people. They're trying to get as many in their fold as possible, and they're making the taxpayer pay for it. And I know how this is going to go. They're going to pass this bill for broadband subsidies to reach more people, but the cell phone abuses that we're also paying for will never be corrected. This is very similar to what Ronald Reagan fell for back in the 80s, where he granted amnesty for illegals against his better judgment, but part of the agreement was to close down the border. That part of it never happened. The border never was secured. Just like these abuses with the cell phone program will never actually be rooted out. They'll continue. Because just like letting all these people in is a captive audience of people that'll vote for Democrats, and this broadband internet subsidy will allow the Democrats to reach more voters. That part of it will happen. The part that benefits the Democratic Party will happen. The stuff that'll make it easier on the taxpayers, that will not happen.